For a very long time, writing letters was the only way friends and family could keep in touch when they were far away from each other. Letters helped people feel close to their loved ones, and it still does. Have you ever sent a friend or a relative a card or a letter? Has anyone sent you something in the mail? Did it make you feel special? When we write something down, it requires more attention and focus. When we handwrite a letter, we are thinking of the person we will send it to, and that makes them feel even more special. In the early days of York, letter writing meant that you needed specific supplies. You would need feathers that were dried and hardened, ink, paper, which could be expensive, and knives for making the feathers into quill pens. People didn't send their letters in envelopes. Your letter would become its own envelope by a little bit of fancy folding. First, we'd fold the edges in, and then we'd fold the bottom up, and then finally, you would tuck the bottom into the flap at the top. To keep the letter closed, people would use a special wax called a sealing wax. It came in sticks that they would melt over a candle, apply to the paper, and then stamp. This would create a nice seal on the letter and a design in the wax. Once your letters were folded, sealed, and addressed, you'd take them to the post office. Except the post office wasn't really a post office. It might just be some place that people would drop off their letters for friends or other travelers to pick up and carry on. The Golden Plough Tavern served as the post office for a short time in the early days of York. People used feathers as pens for over 1,000 years. In the 1830s, the common writing tool was similar to the quill, except the point was made of metal, but you still had to dip it in ink. This was used through the 1850s, when the fountain pen became the cool writing tool. This pen didn't need to be dipped in ink. It had the ink already inside. The ballpoint pen that we often use today was invented in 1888, but nobody used them then because they were way too expensive. That changed in the 1950s when the price went down, and then most people started using them. In 1847, Congress authorized the use of postage stamps. There were two kinds. First was a 5-cent stamp for letters traveling less than 300 miles and had Benjamin Franklin on it because he was the first postmaster. The second had George Washington on it and was a 10-cent stamp for letters going further than 300 miles. To send your letters, you drop them off at the post office. To receive letters, you'd pick them up at the post office. It wasn't until the 1860s that mail would get delivered right to your home, usually only if you lived in the city. Today, everyone gets mail delivered directly to their homes 6 days a week. The cost of stamps has gone up over time, and people seem to write letters less, partly because we have so many other options. We can easily call, text, or email our loved ones to let them know we're thinking of them. It's still nice to receive a letter in the mail. It's a great way to say hello, to practice your spelling and writing skills. It's also a great way to make our friends and family feel special.